Uganda became independent from the British in 1962 when my father was just a boy. When I was a boy, I saw the extreme poverty in Uganda had its way of keeping us dependent on foreign aid. In that area, our journey to independence was not nearly complete. To become self-reliant, there were things I knew I needed that I was determined to find. And thankfully, there were things and people that I did not know I needed, which it would later feel like had been determined to find me. A courageous and kind of a reckless girl from some place called Colorado was one of those. Our story is a bit about adventure and pain and a team of unlikely friends fighting unlikely odds. And I would say it is also about what gaining independence actually means. But mostly, like a lot of African stories, it is about family. And it's about more than just us.
I literally Googled cheapest way to go to Africa and learn microfinance. An opportunity popped up, microfinance internship in Uganda, Uganda. I told my sister, Leah, so she's like, you can't go to Uganda without me. And then we had another friend, Sally, who was also a student at the University of Colorado, and she found an internship working at the main hospital in Uganda.
Andrea took me to this orphanage where she was volunteering and providing food. You know, the whole town would bring their trash and dump it there. It was a really total mess, very dirty.
I was like, Musongo, I ran. And then running was Andrea. Seeing a person of a different color. She was just like a tourist attraction, let's say.
There were reasons that the kids were kept living like that. I mean, you can't go to a place like this orphanage and not feel like you have to do something because of the conditions.
We could sleep on the floor, first of all, and the place was very dusty. We just sleep, no beds. All of us, like in this room, we put their mattresses. And some girls, they could go and do their own things. They can't sleep with men because they want something to eat.
You go and asking, where can I get some kind of breakfast to feed myself? And then someone is like, you find it yourself. I found some kind of a bread being tied. And then there was a rat inside. I had to scrap off what the rat had shared, and then I had to eat that. I had to join the group. We just rob. Not because I wanted, but because the stomach I used to demand, and then... So there, more suffering started.
The more I went there, the more the kids just became like so special. It stopped being just this mob of kids and it started to be Demily and Rebecca and Solomon and Joseph and Joshua. You know, I got to know them. The head of the local government said, you have 2 days. We'll come and we'll kick all these kids out. Like, what do you mean you're gonna send them? Like, they're gonna just go where? We were praying and we were crying and we're like, oh my gosh, how do we rescue them? How do we make sure these kids don't end up on the street? You know, what if we start our own children's home? I mean, honestly, I don't think we had any idea how we were gonna do it. We just knew it had to happen.
One of the most powerful things for me was the conversation Andrea, Lee, and Sally really had. The passion and how intrigued they are. At part of me, I was like, of course they just don't understand Africa. They don't understand, you know, the situation, but it was extreme.
They loved the song, You Are My Sunshine. So I remember asking, like, what is sunshine in the local language? And they said Musana. And so we named it Musana. At that point, it was an idea. Sally and Leah both left. We needed them to go and share the stories and raise money. So I told them, like, I'm gonna stay and take these kids.
You're gonna stay in Africa? In this situation? For these kids?
I'll never forget calling my parents and telling them, especially my dad, like, I have to stay, I have to do this. And literally my dad said, Andrea, get your butt home. The government officials, everyone was looking at me like, you're crazy, go home. Like, you can go back. Everyone, and that's honestly, most people were like, you can go back after you graduate. Like, get a little older, get a little wiser. I got home one day and there was a burnt frog on a stick sticking out of my windowsill. What does this mean? And they're like, oh, that's a death curse. They told me you can't stay here anymore because you're too much of a risk.
You know, I didn't see myself in the future dream of Musana. At this point, I'm like, I just want to help these kids to get out of this place. And I did not catch that in my heart very quickly, that I was falling in love with the kids.
You know, I had grown up being told to be the hands and feet of Jesus and told that we should help those less fortunate. Right? I mean, biblically, God talks over and over again about taking care of the orphans and the widows. So how can you go into an environment where you're seeing so many children abandoned and neglected and abused and walk away from that and think that that's what God would want for your life?
When the time came and they told us, you know what? We are taking you to another place, to a place called Musana.
September 16th, 2008 will always be the best day of my life. Driving with the kids from the other orphanage into the compound of Musana. And the excitement, and them getting out of the car and just screaming in joy.
Wow. We danced. We were like, the prayer is working. We should go to the altars.
Watching them line up, you know, and saying, ready, go. And I remember actually going through and like thinking like, this kid would like these bed sheets. Most of these kids had never slept on a bed before.
And then coming in, I'm like, okay, look for your name on your bed. And the noise, you know, and the voices of joy, them running and jumping, and you could see tears. I was just standing there with chills.
And I gave them a hug and I gave them a kiss. And I said, you know, you're home and you're safe.
But I couldn't believe I'm having a new life by then. I was like, maybe I'm just dreaming. They called me for supper. This is real. I'm not dreaming. That's the day I tasted some good food for the first time.
As I just felt home. You know, I felt home.
If you could write a book on how not to run organization in Uganda, you could do a study on those first 2.5 years. I mean, it was a very typical, whoever has the money has the power, right? I mean, I had missionaries that had been here 20 years who were mentors to me, tell me, never give up power, never give up control. I was living in that. I carried a huge burden and the pressure. I mean, I would say 95% of the time, I wanted to rip my hair out. I mean, I had lost so much weight. I couldn't eat. Hair was falling out.
Andrea was, you know, so burnt out and, you know, broken. In so many ways, we have seen whether Americans or Europeans coming and investing their time, resources, and energy into solving problems here. And they end up breaking down, you know, and regretting what did they do. People say, you know, Africa is a basket with holes. You know, you pour in, but, you know, it doesn't hold. But the biggest problem has been the approach.
In most charity models, you have a direct relationship between the donor and the beneficiary. And the donor supports a sponsored child to go to school. The donor supports a meal for somebody. What ends up happening is it leaves the rest of the community out.
I told them, like, let's look at ourselves. This is an opportunity for us locals to transform, you know, the lives of our children. You know, if we do not have jobs, if we do not have education, if we do not have healthcare, it's like we are stripped naked. And that means we have no dignity. So how do we revive our dignity? In our culture, you know, it's not a nuclear family, it's an extended family. The community raises a child.
How can the donor, instead of give directly to the beneficiary, really empower the community to be lifted up so that they can be the ones that support the most vulnerable? To be honest, no white person should ever start anything in Africa unless it is in partnership. But that's where I think the miracle of Musana comes in.
The only thing that is going to make an impact is something that is coming out of us, because it starts from inside. And what's inside me is like, no, we need to own this as the community so that it becomes our responsibility to change.
We wanted Musana to be owned, not just owned on paper, but owned in the heart, owned in the mind by the community. And so Musana was registered as a local NGO. We built a local board made up of Ugandans. I was the only non-Ugandan on the board.
So you would see people now sacrificing their time, their energy, and everything, and they became invested. Once that is there, it uplifts people more than you can imagine.
First of all, being in a life that no one cares, and then coming to a life where someone is caring, there is a big change in mindset.
Our community needed to build an economy, and we saw social enterprise as the most sustainable economic model. In 2009, Musana started his first school. In 2010, Musana opened Soul Cafe. In 2011, Musana Children's Home reorganized as Musana Community Development Organization.
From then on, I would say we started working on figuring out ways of how to address the ultimate problem of poverty.
By 2011, boarding was added to Musana schools. Andrea and I had been married for 3 years when Musana opened his first hospital in Uganda. Musana began building his first high school in 2016, and it opened in 2017. A year later, we opened a nursery and primary school in Bukona, another village in Iganga district.
From the beginning, people would tell us, you cannot run a school sustainably in Uganda. You cannot run a hospital sustainably in Uganda because people won't pay for it. People are too poor. And we've proven they are willing to pay for it. How do we know they're willing to pay for it? Because they're paying for it.
By 2018, 10 years from founding Musana, our social enterprises covered 100% of Musana's operational costs.
The donor builds the infrastructure. The local community owns it, sustains it. Schools and hospitals and empowerment centers and guest houses and restaurants that are creating jobs. Those enterprises are profitable, and those profits support the charity component of Musana. And right now, if Musana never received another dollar from a donor, everything that is happening in Uganda would continue.
At times you feel like there is something that has pushed you somewhere. Like being loved builds you up. Like you feel you're someone. You feel you can make a change. You feel like you can provide beyond your capacity just because you're loved. Here I am now. I'm a nurse, a graduate.
When they brought us at Musana, I was the oldest one among them. So I could take care. I grew up with that thing in my heart because I could love young children so much and I could take care of them. So it impressed me so that I can be a teacher. Because being a teacher, you have to do something which will help that child's hands. So I think Andrea and Andy, so what they did, it is now what I am. What a wonderful thing God has done for us. Yes.